Welcome to the Popcorn Talk Network, for the online broadcast network that features movie discussion, news, and interviews. Press 1. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies.
Leo Quinones, this is a film freak. All that crazy Leo.
If you love nothing more than movies, well, my friend, you're in the right place. My name is Leo Quinones. This is America's longest-running movie talk show, the Film Freak Movie Interview, and we are broadcasting on the Popcorn Talk Network. I'm telling you, Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro really put together an incredible network of people that talk about movies. That's what we do. So, you know, everybody has their favorite movie of all time. I have mine, you have yours. Today, we get to talk about one of mine, and it's very exciting. There's a new movie that's coming out, a small movie, a classy movie, a well-written film. It's called Like Sunday, Like Rain. It's coming out April 21st. Video on demand, iTunes, your cable provider. It's all there. But to get to the bottom of it, I want to talk to the guy who wrote it down, script to screen, directed it, the one, the only. You've seen him a million times, a million movies, a million good performances. The one and only Frank Whaley. Frank, thank you so much for being on the Film Freak Movie
Thanks for
Interview.
having me. Cop and a Half is my favorite movie of all time. It's a brilliant film. Cop and a Half. Look it up.
I remember Cop and a Half. It was,
Burt Reynolds and a little boy. I don't remember his name.
and you must have been, I would
I believe
say,
he's working at a 7-Eleven here in Encino.
who was?
The little kid from Cop and a Half is on Burbank Boulevard making slushies right now.
Do you ever feel like you have to defend some of the movies you like, Frank?
No, I refuse to defend Cop and a Half. I refuse to. I refuse to defend it. It's The Great Waldo Pepper. It's another great movie. One of my second favorite movies, Great Waldo Pepper. Yes. The Adventures of the Great Waldo Pepper. Look it up. Look it up, folks.
Hey, I'm doing some research on Frank Whaley. You know, that's what we do here. And then
That's something people do in rehab. They research Frank Whaley.
Well,
It's-
you know,
it's part of the 12 steps.
your IMDb rap sheet is so long. Ballpark estimate, how many movies and TV shows? Ballpark.
100 something.
So
Yeah.
you have a very great body, a wonderful body of work.
Oh, you could have stopped at body. Fine. Look at this. 71 years old. I've got the body of a 13-year-old girl.
Looking fantastic, this guy. Hey, listen, I got freaked out this morning about 6:45 a.m. looking up you.
Wow.
I saw like a 30-second clip on YouTube, maybe it was a minute and a half, about this show I never knew existed called Celebrity Ghost Stories. Now, is that BS, or are these true life accounts of paranormal crossovers with celebrities?
Sounds like Frank needed some cash. Sounds like Frank got a little behind with the IRS.
Michael Biehn, the great actor, says,
Sounds like my agent called me up and saying, got an episode of Matlock,
Yeah.
or I got Celebrity Ghost Hunters, whatever the hell it's called. And I
Wait
said,
a minute, wait a minute.
which is paying more, sir?
yeah, Michael Biehn, the great actor, said the bad films pay more. Is that a true thing?
Not necessarily.
No?
I mean, sometimes the bad films pay, period. So, but yeah, I don't I remember a little bit about the Celebrity Ghost stories. I do remember sitting in a park with my kids and my agent calling and saying, "Would you like to do this?" And I said, "I don't want to do this. No, but how much money they got to give me?" And so I did. I'm not sure what the story. What was?
Okay, this is great. Okay,
was it a true story?
It was. They had a dramatization, so actors were acting out. You and your wife.
John
Okay.
Cryer played me, I believe, in this episode. Couldn't get Donnie. They couldn't get Donnie Wahlberg.
So wait a minute. It was John Cryer playing you, so
Yes.
he really needed the money.
He was hard up. He was hard up.
You were doing almost a camera testimonial about your son standing in the hallway in the middle of the night saying an amazing revelation: "Mommy has a baby in her tummy."
Yeah, that happened. That happened. Yeah.
But you said the crib was this high and it was impossible for him to get out of.
Yes, I
That-
did say that.
that
I did
freaked
say
me
that.
out.
I said that because it's true.
Wow.
That is a true story. That is a true story. We were living somewhere, and my son had there was ghosts in this place, and
what led you to believe that, Frank?
My agent told me I had to come up with a story for every ghost story. I think that's what led me to believe it. And I believed it when I said it because I believed it. And I believed it was true.
I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, really funny.
Yeah, that's that's one of those one of those things, it's I'm not going to say I'm not going to say it's not a true story because my attorneys are very expensive, but I will say that I don't remember.
Okay.
I plead the fifth.
The statute of limitations, of course, has run out by now, so we can talk about anything here,
Unless
Frank.
there's a sequel. There might be a sequel. Maybe they want me to come back and reenact it again.
Season 5 is on hold, so we'll have to wait and see if there's more for you to tell.
Celebrity ghost stories.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, let's see.
It's the pinnacle of my career.
Let's talk about you and your acting because you've been in some of my favorite films. So everyone says... Well, you've done 4 films with Oliver Stone.
I have.
And everyone, it seems to be common knowledge that Val Kilmer stayed in as Jim Morrison, which you could probably attest to that.
Yeah.
But how about you, Frank? How about you as Robbie Krieger? I know musically you're there, but you got chops there musically.
Yeah.
How far did you take it? Did you guys get wasted all the time? How did you become the Doors?
Well, we spent a lot of time together. The process began a couple of months before we started filming, and they put us. It was funny. They put us, all 4 of us. It was Val, obviously, Kyle MacLachlan, Kevin Dillon, and myself. We played the Doors, and they put us in this in these rehearsal studios, like SRS studios, which are where real musicians go to rehearse for tours and stuff like that. And they brought us all. And this was months before the movie began. They put us in this studio, and none of us played the instruments that we were. I'm a drummer by trade.
Okay.
I was playing guitar player. Kevin Dillon didn't play the drums. Kyle, didn't, and Jim did a pretty good Jim Morrison, but so we spent months listening to playback and pretending we were playing these instruments, which was the most bizarre and surreal thing to be doing. So mostly we sat around and just BS'd all day, but we got to know each other really well, and I got to look like I was playing guitar through that, but we never actually played the instruments because we didn't know how to. And but it was really fun. We had the Doors producers, like they're the guys that did those sessions and stuff. They were all there. Oliver obviously was there, and so we did it allowed us to get into character in that.
Did the stars line up on a certain night? Maybe you guys in character or out of character, or 2 a.m. Getting crazy, like the band might have done, taking their spirits and channeling them.
I know that there was during the rehearsal process. They chartered a couple of Lear jets.
Whoa.
And they flew everybody out to the desert. And so it was the 4 of us and Meg Ryan, a few others. Oliver and a couple the cinematographers and that we all went out to the desert, and I know there was some conversation about going to a cave and taking hallucinogenics,
like a peyote or maybe something like that.
Something like that, yeah. I'm not sure about anybody else, but my reaction to that would be I'm so neurotic. Like if I smell weed, I become very paranoid. So for me, that was a terrifying notion and something that was just completely off the table for me. So I said, you can do what you want. I went back, we were in Needles, California, and my preference was to go to the hotel and watch, a block of Judge Judy, have a little Chardonnay, and, spend a little time with myself and go to sleep.
Do you think some actors take it too far in trying to get into their roles?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Do you sometimes find yourself, your body language, when you're working with some of these people, rolling your eyes going, okay, I'm going to get through this scene. Even though you're doing your process, I have my process, but it's weird.
Yeah.
You can go anonymous and give me some crazy examples because I love this stuff.
I've always been very, I started on the stage, and so I have my own kind of method of doing things. I think every actor does. I don't, when I'm working, especially when I'm acting in a movie, the less talk, the better. I don't like to, I like to keep it fresh. I don't like to, overdo it because I think then that detracts because, you get a few takes and then it starts to run dry a little bit. So, I get annoyed when other actors want to talk and talk and talk and talk and talk about things. I just kind of want to do it and get it over with, and unless there's some problem, like I start to roll my eyes when they want to just analyze and talk about it and that, so yeah. So for me, I kind of like to just to jump in and do it.
What's the most takes you've ever had to do that you recall in one scene? Where it just got stupid?
I think, it's funny because when I'm directing a film, I'm a perfectionist in terms of the performance. So I sometimes can demand a lot of takes until I get exactly what it is I want. So I'm kind of contradicting myself. But in terms of my acting, with Pulp Fiction, that I recall was a great amount of takes. Getting that right and getting those squib hits right and stuff like that. I just remember being bruised by the end of it because of those
That was like 50 or so, right, on squibs. The special effects that pop off you.
Quite a few.
So you're getting a slug every time, right?
It hurts. Yeah, after a while it hurts. So I just remember I was hoping that would be over because I was every time it did was pop 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 pop. It takes a lot out of you. But the small movies they don't have the time for a lot of takes, and that. So I think that what comes to mind is that was quite a few. He was pushing it.
What's it like when you've given the most amazing take, your best performance, and you nailed it beyond comprehension, and then it was out of focus?
Well, that's a drag. But even worse is when you feel like you've given you can't do any better. You really nailed it. And says, let's try one more. Yeah, I'm not just not. You got to. I can't try. You just. And you have no idea what the guy's talking about. And then he's like, yeah, okay. And then I tend to, because I like to do it in one or two takes, and then I don't want anybody to I just want to be left alone. Have a chocolate croissant and go back to my room. That's all I want.
You sound like a man of few needs, Frank.
I don't have a lot of needs. No, I just let me do my thing, and that's not an easy thing to say to a director because you have to be respectful.
Sure.
And again, I contradict myself because when I'm in the director chair, so to speak, the performance is for me something I dwell on quite a bit, and I'm very specific. So I'm probably very annoying. I'm sure I am.
I was doing an interview with your Field of Dreams co-star, Ray Liotta, and I said, how much direction do you like? And he goes, not much! So I can
That's
see.
good.
So when you work with these amazing auteurs, let's just take Oliver Stone, okay?
Yeah.
You're a smart guy, Frank. You're on the set with him 15 hours a day. Are you cherry-picking him and then putting that into your little directing repertoire? So like what would you learn from an Oliver Stone?
Probably more than anyone I've worked with. Yeah, I mean, he and I obviously, the films I make are, sort of quiet. The films I've made have been kind of small, somewhat dramatic features, and his films are obviously, the worlds apart from what I do. But the thing about Oliver is that when you're on his set, it's kind of it's bigger than just a movie set. You feel like you're part of something amazing, and something big, monumental, and that's how I felt when I've been working with him. Born on the 4th of July, I felt it sort of transcends, and it's because of him, and it's how and the way he handles a movie set is like no other director. He's in complete control. It's kind of somewhat revered. And he's just, he knows exactly what he's doing. And on The Doors, sometimes there would be 8 cameras, in the days of, when they shot film. It was, and he just had complete control over everything, and demanded everybody's attention and respect, and I admired that.
Even though you're just making a film in The Doors, did you get a sense of what rock star fame is as opposed to movie star fame?
There's no comparison. I mean, rock star fame is that's incredible. To be, we shot several scenes in that film in front of immense audiences.
Sure.
One night, I remember we were in San Francisco filming, and it was at night, and we were on this enormous stage. Forget where it was, and there was probably 20,000 extras. In the audience, And it was an incredible feeling to look out and see the sea of people, even though they were being paid to pretend they were fans. And it was a long night, and then I really got a sense of the amount of people there and their passion, because they gave them. The only meal they gave them after like 17 hours of filming were like a wrapped sandwich, and at some point they all got really pissed off and started throwing the sandwiches at the stage. And I remember sitting talking to Billy Idol. I don't know what he was doing there.
Okay.
I'm assuming he was in the movie, and he was telling he was on crutches. Billy Idol was on crutches.
After that motorcycle accident.
Yeah, next day I was talking weird thing. He was telling me about some chick. So I got these chicks was all over my head. He was talking to me, and I was kind of like, and all of a sudden a sandwich hit me on the side of the head. I still have ringing in my ear, and that was 25 years ago. And they just started, like, sandwiches were flying all over the place. And we'd been sitting on the stage, smoking cigarettes and talking for a couple hours while they were lighting. And we all ran. We just had to run off the stage. And Billy Idol was like, trying to, get off the stage on his crutches, getting hit but by sandwiches. It's a very funny sight.
That's something that you just never hear, and just, thank you for sharing that.
Great
Awesome.
story, yeah. It's all coming out in the book.
Huh. Well, I will read that book. So,
It's mostly photographs. Yeah. It's
better
10
for me.
10 pages. Yeah, mostly photographs and charcoal drawings.
Pop up?
We can't afford.
Like Danny
photographs.
DeVito and throw him on from the train. It's a pop-up book.
It's a pop-up book, exactly. Yeah.
Well, okay, let's talk about why you're here. Like Sunday, like rain.
Yes.
Okay, you're going to get credited with a great kid find. I mean, Jaden Lieberher stole the show in St. Vincent just last year, and of course, Eller Coltrane in Boyhood and his journey. But you found a great actor, Julian Shatkin, who is really, I think, the emotional centerpiece of Like Sunday, Like Rain. Where'd you meet this kid? How'd you find him?
We were having a real hard time casting that role. The role that Julian plays is very complex. He's a 12-year-old, but
Let's give it out. I mean, tell us about Like Sunday, Like Rain, then we'll give it.
Well, it's a story about two people. One, a 12-year-old cello prodigy, brilliant. He's 12 years old, about to graduate from high school and enter MIT. He's that kind of a mind, but he's also a prodigious cellist, composer. He's one of these kids. He lives in a mansion in Manhattan, very wealthy, but he has nobody really. His mother is kind of absentee.
Played by Deborah Messing.
His stepfather is a wealthy industrialist in China, and his mother's going off to be with him in China for the summer. Their nanny unexpectedly leaves, and Leighton Meester, on the other side of town, is just lost her job as a waitress, has broken up with her boyfriend, played by Billy Joe Armstrong.
Of Green Day.
And so through a random set of circumstances, she is hired to take care of this boy for the summer. And it's the movie kind of just traces their summer together and the way their friendship grows. And as it turns out, she's also a musician of great value and a cornet player. And so finding the thing about this young man is he's at once intelligent, charming, witty, sensitive, incredibly streetwise, and
How old is he?
He's 12.
And during filming?
He was 12.
12, okay.
Yeah, and it's funny. I just saw in the movie he's like this little child, and I just saw him a couple nights ago, and he's like this. Hey, how are you? Right? Good to meet you. Let's go out and have a cigarette. We'll all get together. I got a new tattoo to show you. He's like 13, and I have a car. But so it's just this tender, beautiful story about the two of them. But this role was so difficult to cast because all the kids that came in wanted to play it kind of a nerdy and bookish, and that's not who he is at all. He's very cool and like I said, New York born and raised, and so he's therefore streetwise and in a way. And he's used to getting what he wants by paying people off, the people around him. There's a part of the movie where she's supposed to take him to summer camp, but he doesn't want to go to summer camp, so he just writes the guy a check, and the guy puts his name down, and he doesn't have to go to summer camp. So he's that kind of guy. But finding an actor of that age with all those qualities proved very, very difficult. And suddenly, the casting directors called and said, we just taped an audition with this youngster that's we think you really like. And I looked at the tape and it was astounding.
Wow.
This kid was great. And so I got together with him and worked on it, and he had us all, in laughter and tears, and he's that good. So I think he's somebody who's going to be, once he gets out of jail, he's going to be incredible. He's going to have a real future as an actor, and he'll beat this rap. It's, they say 5 years, he'll probably be out in 3. He's going to be great. He's going to be fine. No.
Julian Shatkin.
He's not in jail. He's at public school in New York. He's great.
He is going to. That kid is sitting on a powder keg.
Yes. I agree.
So he could be Tony Stark's, illegitimate son in Iron Man 4. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Coming on, hey, you're my dad. Where's my suit?
Yeah. He's got a great future, and a lot of people have asked me. We've been out film festival screenings and stuff like that. And people always ask me, wait, what you got to do? A follow up to this, a sequel to this movie, because people want to see what happens with with these two, and so I'm bouncing ideas around my head.
You have 11 years left.
Yeah.
Just, a little here, a little here, a little here, a little here.
I want to, by the time,
That's fresh. That's new. No one's done that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. That is an idea that's already been done. Never mind. I'm not going to do that. Maybe I'll do Cop and a Half, too.
Well, you know what? We are proud of Cop and a Half 2 around here. So, wrangling a rock star. Let's talk about that. Billy Joe Armstrong of Green Day.
Yeah. Well,
what made you go, he's the guy?
Well, it was, I saw an episode of Nurse Jackie that he did, which he was amazing at, and it was just a couple of scenes with him and Edie Falco, and he had a real presence, and I loved what he did, and I thought, and my casting director and I were talking about this role where he kind of plays a slacker wannabe musician in my film, and she said, how about a real musician? And so we came to this. We put together a list, and Billy was on there. I said, let's send it to him, and he read it, and he said yes. He said he didn't want anything special, no special treatment. He just wanted to come, and maybe an 8-ball in the morning, but and that's it. No, he didn't want anything. He didn't. That's a joke. But Billy, he was such a true pro, and what he did for me was, this role was written sort of, there was a kind of a little bit of danger to this role, as written, and anger, and he was kind of a violent kind of guy.
He had rage.
Yeah, and what Billy did was he brought a sort of likability to it, and he kind of made him whiny. And which
needy.
But you could sort of relate to him, and you could see why she sort of had an attraction for him in a strange way, because he was kind of this puppy dog character. So that's what Billy brought to it, and that's something that I was really happy with.
He could have been a major tool, because he's about as popular in music as you get.
Yeah, he's talk about rock star fame. I mean, he's huge. People are so fanatical about Billy and Green Day, and he's they're iconic. He's being inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. So
Baseball Hall of Fame, which is unheard of for a musician. It's incredible.
Wait a minute now. Okay, so you have a blank page, and then the story of someone's summer vacation pops up. What was the genesis, Frank?
It started really with a kind of a chance encounter that I had on the street in New York in 2008 or 7 or 8, and my wife and I were walking home from the movies. I lived in Manhattan at the time, and I bumped into somebody that I hadn't seen in about 25 years, and this is a friend from around 1985. There was a hotel workers strike, and I was broke, and I went and they were hiring anybody to be room service waiters. I went to the Helmsley Palace Hotel, which is a big, luxurious hotel in Manhattan, and I went and they gave me a job as a room service waiter. I had no experience whatsoever, and I was a horrible waiter. And this fellow was also employed, and his name was Jean, and worked together, and we became really good friends for 2 or 3 months working at this job, until I finally they had enough with me, because I was spilling stuff all over the place and dropping trays, and so they fired me, and I said goodbye to him, and I never saw him again until this night in 2008, and bumped into him on the street, and I was like, I remembered what an impact he had on me, because we were both struggling actors at the time, and we supported each other and had encouragement for each other, and then I just kind of forgot about it. But subconsciously, I think I carried that time and that the relationship that I had with him, the friendship that I had with him along the way, and I thought that would make an interesting idea for a movie. I thought, how in New York City, or the people kind of come in and out of each other's lives, and are thrown together randomly, come in and out of each other's lives, and then kind of drift off. And so I thought, I'm gonna think about that, and I came up with these two characters, this little boy, and who was sort of loosely based on my son and other kids like that, and then the story kind of evolved from there.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a convoluted way, but I think that's how most stories come together. A little bit from here, a little bit from there, and I wrote it over about a year, and yeah.
And Leighton was always
Leighton was always my dream. Eleanor, I'd seen Country Strong, which she was so good in, and to me, she was the best thing in that movie, and there was something about her face and her eyes, and I thought, and I was writing the script at the time. I thought, this is exactly what I'm writing, this person. And then I sent it to her, and she responded to it. We sat and had coffee, and we ended up talking for hours.
Wow.
And the 3 hours went by, and as it happened, her background is very similar to the character she plays in the movie in many ways, where she comes from, who she is, and she really related to it, and that's what you want, because you don't have to do anything. And I saw the movie again the other night with an audience, and I hadn't seen it in a while, and her performance in this film is so striking, it's so beautiful, and so subtle, and it takes this really special actress to be able to do that. And her chemistry with this little kid, Julian, is so remarkable, and I thank her and credit her with kind of, because he's so young and it was his first feature film, kind of carrying him through it. And I watched her do that, because in 20 days we had to make this film. I had I had a million things to do, and every once in a while I turn and see her, working with him and occupying him and taking care of him, and I think that's comes through in the film.
In that 20 days, Frank, production, your baby, do you sleep? Is it ulcer time?
It was the toughest thing I've ever. I mean, this is my fourth film, and I've made all of them with relatively within that budget range. All the films I've made have been made for a million or less. This film was made for substantially less than $1 million, and as I said, 20 days. And now I lost 15 pounds while we were filming this. So I weighed 86 pounds by the end of it, and that was just my head. But I forgot to eat. I was exhausted. I looked like Don Knotts. I'm not kidding. I looked like death, but because I tend to do everything, I tend to, because you have to, and we were filming at a time. There was a lot of film. We filmed in New York, in all 5 boroughs of New York, in 20 days, and there was a real work. There was all kinds of work going on in New York, so there was no crew available in New York. So we had to, just by necessity, we had a real young crew, and they were real gung ho and they were really enthusiastic, but none of them knew what the hell they were doing.
Right.
Unfortunately, and so we had to kind of, myself and my cinematographer, the camera crew, we had to kind of do everything. So it was a real battle. And filming in New York in August it's never easy on a low budget.
How do you get the best performance out of your actors, since you're an actor yourselves? I'm not an actor, but if I was not giving you what you wanted, what's your approach?
Well, what I did with Julian, I would just smack him in the back of the head. That would just wake him up. He never saw it coming, which, and the surprise on his face made me laugh. So it got a real rise out of everybody.
Oh.
With Leighton, just her green pills. If she's not doing good, get the green, not the blues, not the white, the greens. Give her 3 greens.
I'm sure somewhere in your career you've seen that kind of behavior.
I've seen it. Yeah, I worked in the 80s. I know. I've seen it. Yeah.
Wait a minute. 85, you're in the hotel.
Yeah.
87, 88, was that Field of Dreams?
No, my first film was Ironweed.
Okay.
Which was 87.
How stoked were you?
It was the greatest day of my life. I was working at that time. I was working in a law office, updating law books. I have no idea how I got this job.
That looks like you.
I
Frank.
have no idea. All I remember is I told the woman who was interviewing me that she looked like Michelle Pfeiffer, and I think that's how I got
Ding,
the
ding,
job.
ding.
Yeah, and so it was basically I would come in every day. It would be a stack this big of tissue thin paper. And you would have to go into the New York Law Journal, take the, because one word changes in the whole, so they have to replace the page. I'm sure they do it. They have a computerized system now, but I would have to take the page out and put the, and I would come in, and it was such a tedious, horrible job that I would end up taking half of the page. I would go upstairs to an empty office and sleep behind a bookshelf for half the day, or go on an audition, and I would take the pages that were not updated, and I would stick them in my knapsack, and on the way to the subway, throw them out. I put that law firm out of business.
So they imploded after your employee.
Yeah, like their laws were so their idea of the law was so out of date. But
You had no idea the impact of that you were incurring.
they're still.
But you didn't care.
The lawyer, there's a lawyer from that firm sitting there. I thought segregation was still legal. I was in the book. So I
That's
so
awesome.
while I had that job, I got. I somehow got an agent. I was 23, but I looked really young. I had a very young. I played like a teenager at that time, and so I had this agent, and they got me an audition for Ironweed, and I went and auditioned, and the woman who was casting it said, and I went on my lunch break, and they kept me waiting in the office, in the casting office, for like an hour and a half. I finally got in there, and she said, you're not right for this part. Sorry. And I said, but just let me audition. She said, no, I can tell you're not right. You're just not right for this part. And it was to play Jack Nicholson's character in flashback scenes as a young man. And it was a very good role. And I said, please, she said, I don't want to waste your time. I said, I've been sitting here for an hour and a half. You've already wasted my time. Just let me do it. And she said, no. So long story short, a couple weeks later, they still didn't cast the role. And I got an audition for Hairspray, the original Hairspray movie, John Waters' film. And the woman who was casting that, Marion Doherty, and they recently made a documentary.
Yeah, of course.
Amazing. And
Iconic.
And she said, you're not right for this, but have you been in an Ironweed? And I told her the story. She said, let me make a call. So she called the producer that she of the film Ironweed. She said, she came back in the office. She said, you're going to be on a train to Albany tomorrow, and you're going to audition for the director. And I was broke. I was flat broke. I came from, I'd been in New York for not that long a period of time, a couple of years. And this was a huge opportunity. I got on a train to Albany, went up there, I auditioned for the director. And
Doing Jack? Yeah, Jack-isms? Young Jack-isms?
I was so nervous and so terrified. I don't even know how I did, but he said, his name was Hector Babenco. He's Brazilian director, and he sort of said to me, you got the part. And I didn't really understand it. He told me right there, you have the part. Great, you got the part. I just want you to meet Jack. They took me out of we did it in his trailer, and then I took me out of his trailer and over to Jack Nicholson's trailer, knocked on the door, and Nicholson came to the door. He's like buttoning his pants. He said, yeah? Opening, and he said, and the director said, this guy's gonna play young Francis, which role? And he went, okay. And he shut the door. And I had the part, and it was amazing. It was a huge movie. Meryl Streep, Jack Nicholson, so it was, and I didn't have to go back to the law office, and it was amazing.
Before we get to my favorite movie of all time, you had mentioned, we were talking about Pulp Fiction, Brad, 50 Squibs, and I heard you in an interview, but the interviewer didn't let you finish your answer. You said that you got to that place where Brad, the dying scene, by going back to your childhood, and I wonder what you meant by that.
I'm not sure what I meant by that, but
it was Dan Patrick, October. Last year.
I think I was probably joking, but
Okay.
yeah, I mean.
See, I know you now because you sometimes I don't know when you're serious and when you're joking.
I was probably joking, and I was probably the joke was that pleading for my life was something that I learned at a very young age, growing up in Syracuse, New York. Yeah.
All right. Well, listen. A lot of people stop you on the street and they probably tell you that Field of Dreams is their favorite movie of all time. Does that happen to you?
All the time. Yeah. People love that movie, and with
Did you know?
good reason.
Did you know when you were that young kid that you were onto something hot?
No idea. No, I was so lucky at that period of time because there was a string of iconic movies that I did over a brief period of time. Born 4th of July, Field of Dreams, The Doors. I mean, I had no idea. Pulp Fiction. I had no idea that they were going to turn into these iconic films. The Field of Dreams, it was just so fun. I got to be there in a baseball uniform, hanging out and playing baseball in a cornfield in Iowa for the summer.
You had the best laugh in the entire film. A guy I know from Dimple's Karaoke Bar, Steve Easton, is the pitcher.
Steve Easton.
You're
Okay.
at bat as Archie Graham, and how about a warning? I think that's the best laugh in the entire film.
I love it. Yeah, I love that. That's great. Yeah.
So tell me about some of those interactions on the field. You, Ray Liotta, the ball players, living that dream of Moonlight Graham.
I grew up watching and loving baseball. So I grew up in Syracuse, New York, but I was for some reason a huge Detroit Tigers fan. I can to this day I can tell you every lineup of the Tigers, 72 to 78, and so it was such a thrill for me to be there, to be and in that just pretending to acting like a baseball player was fantastic, and having these coaches show you the right way to swing the bat and do all this stuff. And Leota and I, had a great time together. And I was saying how young I looked. I was in my 20s. I didn't have a driver's license, so I lived in New York. And there was nothing to do. There was a few bars to go to, but I couldn't get in any of them because I had no ID. So I remember a couple of times Leota and I would go. One time we went to a bar, and we got to the door, and everybody went in. And she said, "No, I see some ID," and I said, I have I have credit cards. She said, "Yeah, I can't let you in." So I had to wait in the car while Leota and a bunch of these baseball guys went in and had played pool, got into bar fights, met girls, and I was sitting in this. Because I was 2 hours away to the Best Western in Dubuque.
You got to share Burt Lancaster's last
Wife?
role.
Oh, another story. Yeah, no, that
See,
was.
I have to.
We were so drunk, and she was willing, and Bert just wanted to watch.
Do you trust me, Frank? Do you trust me?
Sure.
Okay. I have to show you something. I have to stand up and show you
Be
something.
careful.
Okay, Stephen, I don't know if we're going to be able to grab this on film or not. All right, here we go.
Reminds me of my
I'm undoing my belt buckle.
This reminds me of college.
Okay?
What's going on?
There won't be no nudity. Okay? Okay, now, I want you to read the brand of pants. Come on. What does it say?
Hold on. Let me get my
Come on.
glasses. It says Moonlight Graham.
Moonlight Graham, right?
Yes.
I just wanted to say, hey,
I appreciate that. It's so funny you should say that because I once went to the
now for you, buddy. These are for you.
Thank you
These
so
are
much.
from my friend Bart Silberman, who created a line of clothing for Moonlight Graham.
How much can I get for these on eBay? I'll
These-
find out later on today.
I mean, take a
Nice.
look. That's what you need in Connecticut.
That's great.
Right there for the snow.
Yes, that's amazing. Thank you.
And one more for you.
I'll have
Check.
I'll give this. This will fit the guy that operates my snowplow.
You're absolutely Moonlight Graham, and this
Amazing.
is absolutely for you.
Thank you so much. This is such a
Isn't that
treat.
far out? I mean,
Thank you.
A lot of, Carrie Elwes says to be remembered for any role is the greatest honor. And dude, you are.
Well, if Carrie Elwes said that, it must be true.
Look at that.
Look at me.
that.
I don't look good in hats. I always end up looking like like the developmentally disabled kid on a field
I don't
trip.
think so. You know what I mean? Let's see that fastball.
Yes.
Everyone's
It's
gonna
so funny because I once went to. Thank you so much.
Sure.
This is so nice. I once went to the look at that moonlight. I'm gonna wear that. I'm gonna wear that. I went to in the Grove out here in L.A.
Sure.
There's like the
summer movies.
no. There's like there's a Moonlight shop or something, like Moonlight Graham store.
There is.
Yeah.
And that's Bart's store. That's my
Bart's
guy.
Store. Well, it said so. I don't know if I met him, but I remember years ago I was out there. I was walking through the Grove with my wife and my kids, and walked in that store, and I said, "Oh, that's strange. I never heard of this." I walked in that store, and they all freaked out.
Yeah.
They what? I think because they recognized me, and I was the guy. I was the guy. So I sued them for their and didn't win the case, but this makes up for it. No.
Cash and prizes every time on the Film Freak Movie Interview, buddy.
It. That's great. That's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Your favorite memory from making that movie then was on golf carts, tooling around?
My favorite I have so many favorite memories. I had the probably the craziest thing that happened was the trailers were parked a good half a mile away from that field.
Okay.
Because they couldn't have anything around it because So I would come out of my room and they had a golf cart, and I would zip around, and after 2 months I would just get out and not without thinking zip around and go to the field. And one day they parked a brand new 18-wheeler camera truck behind it, and nobody told me. And I wasn't really looking what I was doing. I came out and I slammed right into the side of the camera truck. And
Sideswiping head on.
Head on. I tried to with I banged my knees on the thing, and I was such a wise ass. And the guy that operated that truck, a Teamster. You don't mess with those guys. And he was, I said, don't worry about it. He's fine. And it was a huge dent in the side of that truck. And it was, this is not a very happy memory. Never mind. It was not a happy memory at all. It's a horrible memory.
A good memory.
But it was funny. They started, and then they all started calling me Hot Rod around the thing because I slammed into the back of the truck. But it was, it was just, hours and hours and hours of playing ball on that field, and hanging out with Easton, and the rest of the guys, and. There's something really special about being in Iowa at that time of year. At night, the smell of the cow manure blowing into the field was just, was wonderful. Yeah.
Will you be doing this at the late great Burt Lancaster's age? Acting, directing.
I hope so. I mean, he was 175 years old when he did that movie. Yeah,
pretty near the end there.
Yeah. I hope so. He was completely alert and most of the time. Once in a while, we'd throw bread at the back of him. A roll at lunch. We'd throw a roll at the back of his head. He'd be like, "What the hell?"
Burt
Iwo Jima.
Burt Lancaster, for God's sakes.
He was great. He was fantastic. But I would hope so. I mean, what else am I going to do?
I mean, you shared the screen as far as you walk off, and then Frank Whaley morphs into Burt Lancaster.
Yeah. He saves the little girl. The girl chokes on a hot dog.
Yeah.
And he gives her the
and he's a real person. Look up Archibald Moonlight Graham.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a real guy, and he should be in the Hall of Fame. And you, brother, have a new movie coming out, Like Sunday, Like Rain, April 21st. Check it out. Video on demand, iTunes, cable. It's going to be there. Leighton Meester, Deborah Messing, Billy Joe Armstrong of Green Day, and of course, Julian Shatkin as Reggie will blow your mind.
It's playing. You can find it in theaters across the country, in New York and LA, and April 21st.
Something you should really be proud of, brother.
Thank you.
A really, really nice film. Thanks for being on the show.
It's been my pleasure, and thanks for the merchandise.
Moonlight Graham in studio. Well, thank you so much for watching. Thank you, producer Steve. Thank you, Maria Menounos.
Yes.
Kevin Undergaro, Popcorn Talk Movie Network, and follow us and check us out on iTunes as well. We appreciate it. We'll see you next time right here on the Film Freak Movie Interview.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network. The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Popcorn Talk Network or its owners or principals.